that half of all mental health problems begin in childhood, before the age of 14. And one of the things we're looking at is how experiences of early adversity, such as domestic violence and maltreatment, can lead to changes in brain structure and function that can embed long-term vulnerability to mental health problems. It's something we're calling latent vulnerability. Those who had been exposed to maltreatment and domestic violence showed heightened patterns of activation in those brain regions related to threat vigilance and threat detection. And what was striking is that we see the same pattern in other studies done by other groups where they have looked at soldiers before and after combat. And that might help both the soldiers and the children function in those environments, but the difficulty is that it may also embed long-term vulnerability. We believe it is reversible. We know that many children who experience abuse and neglect and domestic violence have a resilient and positive outcome, and we expect that their brain will change and respond to positive emotional experiences such as social support and being in a secure and safe environment.
The key to each of these changes is neuroplasticity. So what does it look like? So your brain can change in three very basic ways to support learning. And the first is chemical. So your brain actually functions by transferring chemical signals between brain cells, what we call neurons, and these trigger a series of actions and reactions. So to support learning, your brain can increase the amount or the concentrations of these chemical signaling that's taking place between neurons. Now, because this kind of change can happen very rapidly, this supports short-term memory, or the short-term improvement in the performance of a motor skill. The second way that the brain can change to support learning is by altering its structure. So during learning, the brain can change the connections between neurons. Now here, the physical structure of the brain is actually changing, so this takes a bit more time. These types of changes are related to long-term memory, the long-term improvement in a motor skill. Now, these processes, they interact, and let me give you an example of how. So we've all tried to learn a new motor skill, maybe playing the piano, maybe learning to juggle. And you've had the experience of getting better and better within a single session of practice and thinking, I've got it. And then maybe you've returned the next day and all those improvements from the day before, they're lost. What happened? Well, in the short term, your brain was able to increase the chemical signaling between your neurons. But for some reason, those changes did not induce the structural change that are necessary to support long-term memory. Remember that long-term memories take time, and what you see in the short term does not reflect learning. It's these physical changes that are now going to support long-term memories and chemical changes that support short-term memories. Structural changes also can lead to integrated networks of brain regions that function together to support learning. And they can also lead to certain brain regions that are important for very specific behaviors to change their structure or to enlarge. And so here's some examples of that. So people who read Braille, they have larger hand sensory areas in their brain than those of us who don't. Your dominant hand motor region, which is on the left side of your brain if you're right-handed, is larger than the other side. And research shows that London taxi cab drivers who actually have to memorize a map of London to get their taxi cab license, they have larger brain regions devoted to spatial or mapping memories. Now, the last way that your brain can change to support learning is by altering its function. As you use a brain region, it becomes more and more excitable and easy to use again. And as your brain has these areas that increase their excitability, the brain shifts how and when they're activated. With learning, we see that whole networks of brain activity are shifting and changing. So neuroplasticity is supported by chemical, by structural, and by functional changes. And these are happening across the whole brain. They can occur in isolation from one another, but most often they take place in concert. Together, they support learning, and they're taking place all the time. So I've just told you really how awesomely neuroplastic your brain is. So why can't you learn anything you choose to with ease? Why do our kids sometimes fail in school? Why, as we age, do we tend to forget things? And why don't people fully recover from brain damage? That is, what is it that limits and facilitates neuroplasticity? And so this is what I study. I study it specifically how it relates to recovery from stroke. So recently, stroke dropped from being the third leading cause of death in the United States to be the fourth leading cause of death. Great news, right? Well, it actually turns out that the numbers of people having a stroke has not declined. We're just better at keeping people alive after a severe stroke. So what can be done? Well, one thing is absolutely clear. The best driver of neuroplastic change in your brain is your behavior. The problem is that the dose of behavior, the dose of practice that's required to learn new and relearn old motor skills, it's very large. And how to effectively deliver these large doses of practice is a very difficult problem. It's also a very expensive problem. So the approach that my research has taken is to develop therapies that prime or that prepare the brain to learn. And these have included brain stimulation, exercise, and robotics. But through my research, I've realized that a major limitation to the development of therapies that speed recovery from stroke is that patterns of neuroplasticity are highly variable from person to person. Now, as a researcher, variability used to drive me crazy. It makes it very difficult to use statistics to test your data and your ideas. And because of this, medical intervention studies are specifically designed to minimize variability. But in my research, it's becoming really clear that the most important, the most informative data that we collect is showing this variability. So by studying the brain after stroke, we've learned a lot, and I think these lessons are very valuable in other areas. So the first lesson is that the primary driver of change in your brain is your behavior. So there's no neuroplasticity drug you can take. Nothing is more effective than practice at helping you learn, and the bottom line is you have to do the work. And in fact, my research has shown that increased difficulty, increased struggle, if you will, during practice actually leads to both more learning and greater structural change in the brain. The problem here is that neuroplasticity can work both ways. It can be positive. You learn something new and you refined a motor skill. It also can be negative, though. You forgot something you once knew. You become addicted to drugs. Maybe you have chronic pain. So your brain is tremendously plastic, and it's being shaped both structurally and functionally by everything you do, but also by everything that you don't do.
Ooh, let's listen to that again.
So your brain is tremendously plastic, and it's being shaped both structurally and functionally by everything you do, but also by everything that you don't do. The second lesson we've learned about the brain is that there is no one-size-fits-all approach to learning. So there's no recipe for learning. Consider the popular belief that it takes 10,000 hours of practice to learn and to master a new motor skill. Now, I can assure you it is not quite that simple. For some of us, it's going to take a lot more practice, and for others, it may take far less. So the shaping of our plastic brains it's far too unique for there to be any single intervention that's going to work for all of us. And now this realization has forced us to consider something called personalized medicine. So this is the idea that to optimize outcomes, each individual requires their own intervention. And the idea actually comes from cancer treatments. And here it turns out that genetics are very important in matching certain types of chemotherapy with specific forms of cancer. My research is showing that this also applies to recovery from stroke. So there are certain characteristics of brain structure and function that we call biomarkers. And these biomarkers are proving to be very helpful in helping us to match specific therapies with individual patients. And the data from my lab suggests it's a combination of biomarkers that best predicts neuroplastic change and patterns of recovery after stroke. And that's not surprising given how complicated the human brain is. But I also think we can consider this concept much more broadly. Given the unique structure and function of each of our brains, what we've learned about neuroplasticity after stroke applies to everyone. Behaviors that you employ in your everyday life are important. Each of them is changing your brain. And I believe we have to consider not just personalized medicine, but personalized learning. The uniqueness of your brain will affect you, both as a learner and also as a teacher. And now this idea helps us to understand why some children can thrive in traditional education settings and others don't. Why some of us can learn languages easily, and yet others can pick up any sport and excel. So when you leave this room today, your brain will not be the same as when you entered this morning. And I think that's pretty amazing. But each of you is going to have changed your brain differently. Understanding these differences, these individual patterns, this variability and change, is going to enable the next great advance in neuroscience. It's going to allow us to develop new and more effective interventions and allow for matches between learners and teachers and patients and interventions. And this does not just apply to recovery from stroke. It applies to each of us as a parent, as a teacher, as a manager, and also, because you're at TEDx today, a lifelong learner. Study how and what you learn best. Repeat those behaviors that are healthy for your brain, and break those behaviors and habits that are not. Practice. Learning is about doing the work that your brain requires. So the best strategies are going to vary between individuals. You know what? They're even going to vary within individuals. So for you, learning music may come very easily, but learning to snowboard, much harder. I hope that you leave today with a new appreciation of how magnificent your brain is. You and your plastic brain are constantly being shaped by the world around you. Understand that everything you do, everything you encounter, and everything you experience is changing your brain. And that can be for better, but it can also be for worse. So when you leave today, go out and build the brain you want. Thank you very much.
So at this point, my hope is that you are screaming in your car while you're watching this, listening to this, or on your sofa, or in your bed, and you're like, how? That's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping right now you're screaming, how? And if that's you, then this next part you've been waiting for. You really have been waiting for this, all of these videos. So I'm going to let you hear from a person much smarter than me. Her face you're going to recognize. And let's get into the how. So for the next few minutes, I'm going to be teaching you, and you're going to be practicing some of these grounding techniques. If you want, after this, you can take a few minutes and research other ones, and there's tons. If you look up grounding techniques, just like a Google search, you might be able to find ones that I don't teach you that really work for you, for your children, for spouses or family members, because everyone's a little different. The one that works for me doesn't work for you. The one that works for you won't work for one of the other participants. It's kind of, it's like the flavor of ice cream that's your favorite. There's about 9,000 different flavors, yet you have one that's different than someone else. So think of it like just trying to find your favorite ice cream flavor. And it's fun to just try them all, and see which one works best. Because I'm only going to teach you a couple, but there are dozens out there. And you can change it and morph it in ways that maybe no one else has, but you're making it your own. So the first one I want to teach you is actually, I'm going to call it colors. Okay, there's two ways you can do this. You can do this by picking a certain color, or you can do it like a list. I'm trying to find the colors. I'm trying to find all the colors. So the first way of colors is you scan the room, and this is tricking your amygdala that is feeling unsafe by giving it another focus. So right now your amygdala is focused on whatever it is that made you feel unsafe. It's focused on the girl walking by that just wrote you that nasty message on Instagram. It's focused on that thing that happened that's making you very angry. It's focused on that trauma that occurred or that anxiety that's coming. And instead, it makes your amygdala think about colors. Just think we're gonna make you think about colors, amygdala, and how in the world could anyone be upset about colors? And your amygdala says, you're right, I'm not upset about colors. That is a beautiful color. And your amygdala just starts to lower, and that drawbridge just starts to connect the pathways to your frontal cortex, because your amygdala is like, you're right, that is yellow. That is yellow. And it can't think about anything else. So for me, when I was practicing, I found all the things in the room that were blue. I'm going to find all the things in this room that are blue. I see a book. I see a pencil. I see a flower that's blue. That's kind of blue. It's a turquoise. Is turquoise blue or green? I'm not sure. Okay, that's a blue. My blazer is blue. Oh, there's an encouragement over there that's blue in that jar. And you just look for everything blue until you have looked around the room 6 times or 600 times, and you start to feel your pulse has lowered, your anxiety has lowered, and all of a sudden you're back. You're kind of just like calm. And that drawbridge has connected your neural pathways to your frontal cortex. And you can then reason through whatever situation might be facing you. The other types of colors is that you make a list and you try to find the colors of the rainbow: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. Where is something red? Where is something red? Something red is, there it is. Yep, there it is. There's the 7 Arrows book. It's red. I found something red. Okay, what's orange? Finding something orange, finding something orange. Oh, there's something orange. It's the side of this kid's Bible right here in my office. The side of it is orange, red, orange, yellow. Oh, that's also yellow. There's also yellow in there. Red, orange, yellow, green. And you just try to find all the colors that are, and it makes your amygdala think about that instead of the thing that it thought was threatening you. So I call that colors. So just for the next few minutes, just practice colors. Now, the reason why you're practicing this is because these are hard things to practice when you're actually in that trigger moment. That's why you have to give yourself chances to practice it when you're not going through it. And then you'll have a chance to practice while you're going through it, because you've already established some of those. Oh, I've done this before. Okay, everything red, everything red, everything red, everything blue, everything blue, everything blue. And you can see if it works. Just like your ice cream. Is this your favorite? So go ahead and practice. Okay, welcome back. We're going to practice our second grounding technique. Our second grounding technique, I'm going to call it I'm so safe. I just made that up. This one is my favorite. So I'm so safe. For some reason, this really, I can feel the calm over my body even when I'm not stressed. This calms me down even when I'm just living normal life. For some reason, I'm so safe. You take your seat, okay? So you take your seat. So I'm sitting in this seat. You take your seat and you just pull up on your seat, okay, with both hands. So I'm going to do that with both hands right now. Sorry. There we go. I'm so safe. So I'm going to pull up. And for some reason, I can feel it in my back. And you literally think This chair is so strong. I couldn't pull it up even if I tried with all of my might. It's so strong. It's so strong. This chair is so, look at that. I'm so strong. I'm never gonna fall. I'm not gonna fall. Look at how strong this chair is. And I can do it anywhere. I can do it sitting in a classroom. I can do it sitting in a meeting. I could do it sitting in this office. I could do it sitting in my car. And no one knows that I'm doing it. It's incredibly, all of these grounding techniques are very like ninja-like. They're very covert mission. No one knows you're doing it, which is the point. You can just do it. No one knows but you and your brain. And I pull up on this chair, and I can feel it. I can feel it in my whole body, from the tips of my toes up into my neck. Something happens. Something happens. My amygdala, done. I'm safe. You're safe. Everybody's safe. Look at how strong this chair is. I'm never gonna fall. So that really works for me. So take a second, go find a chair. If you're not sitting on a chair, if you're like lazed up in a couch, if you're driving, listening to this, don't use both hands because still drive, but just practice lifting up on a chair and see if this is your flavor of ice cream when it comes to grounding. All right, welcome back. We're gonna try another grounding. This is gonna be our third type of grounding. And this works a couple ways. Like I said, a lot of these you can tweak and make them your own. This one is push a wall. It's push a wall. And it is very complicated. You just push a wall. For some reason, this works really well. This works so well. With children, especially, for some reason, this calms them down. And they could be going crazy and they could just push on a wall. Now, here's what I mean by push on a wall. Sometimes it really is like push on a wall. Like you're gonna be standing and you're going to like push the wall, like just push it. And and as you're pushing it, you're thinking to yourself, wow, this wall is really strong. The other way you can do it, if you're trying to be a little bit more like calm, and I don't want everyone to see me push on a wall, sometimes people just go, and you can't tell. It just looks like I'm leaning against a wall. Like everyone does, I'm just leaning against this wall. But while I'm leaning against this wall, I am pushing. And I'm focusing on how strong this wall is. This wall could hold my whole weight. I could push as hard as I can and I would not fall. And you think that through. You push against the wall with your back, you push against the wall with your hands, or you can do it behind you. And for some reason, your amygdala is like, yeah, you're so safe. That wall is safe. Okay, now access your frontal cortex and start thinking about the things that I didn't let you think about, which is creativity and problem solving and being able to apply logic to a situation. And all of a sudden, you are engaged again and can handle the situation that's been thrown at you. So that was our third grounding technique. So go ahead and take a second, see if this is your favorite flavor of ice cream, and just practice. Just practice leaning against the wall. You might feel it. You might start to be like, I don't know why this feels so good, but I just love this. Or you might be like, I don't know why I'm pushing on a wall. And that's okay too. It's not your flavor. It's not your flavor of ice cream. But go practice and see. All right, welcome back. Our fourth grounding technique is going to be, it's very sensory. This is when you just want to feel something. These are for the people that you just really enjoy the way stuff feels. You might catch yourself running your fingers along things sometimes, and you don't even know why you're doing it. You just do it. You might play with your hair. These are for people that play with their hair and they don't even know they're doing it, because there's something about feeling something soft. Maybe when you were younger, you did it and you didn't even, someone got you out of the habit of doing it. This is really for you. So I'm going to call, this is going to be called Just Feel It. Just feel it. Just feel it. is what this grounding technique is called. And I want you to find something that you feel is just, it feels nice. I have these aloe socks that I just love. For some reason, they're soft in this really incredible way. If you've never heard of aloe socks before, go get yourself a pair, and I won't charge you for this knowledge because they're going to change your life. I also have here on my lap some satin, just some satin fabric. It's easy because it's the lining of a lot of material. It's the lining material of a lot of jackets, and I wear suit jackets a lot. So what you do with this, just feel it, is for some people, and you can do this without anyone knowing, just feel the inside of your suit jacket, or just feel the side of your pants, how soft it is. Just feel your shirt, and no one needs to know you're doing it. You're just, something about this, I'm feeling the pattern, just feeling it. It's really making me happy. Same with this, I'm just gonna feel this. And for some reason, when you're feeling this material and you're thinking at the same time, because you have to think at the same time because your amygdala needs to be tricked. So this isn't just something that you're consciously thinking. It can't be something that you're not engaging your brain in. It won't work as well. So I'm engaging my brain in thinking about how soft this material is. So find something, whether it's a blanket that you're snuggled up with right now, or something in your car, maybe the softness of the steering wheel, or there might be like leather, or just something soft that's around. Go ahead and find something. And then I just want you to focus on how soft it is and see if it gives you those tingles that kind of run up your spine, or if it just makes you happy. Something about this just really makes me happy. Other people, instead of actually feeling something with their fingers, they'll feel it with their feet. That's what I was telling you about those socks. So for some reason, if your shoe, the inside of your shoe is really soft, you can just feel that with your feet. Go ahead and practice and see if just feel it is right for you. Welcome back. We're going to learn our last grounding technique today. Like I said, there's hundreds, but I'm just going to show you one more. And that is, it's counting. Counting is something that we don't really have to, we just know, we just do it. It happens a lot. It's actually the reason why your parents said you to count to 10. Count to 10 and calm down. They knew this worked. That's 50 years ago. They knew that counting to 10 helps you when you're angry and helps you calm down and helps your amygdala re-engage. They knew that it worked. They didn't know why it worked, and they didn't know how it worked, but they knew that it worked. So now we know why it works and we know how it works. So what's happening with your amygdala is it's thinking that you're in danger. It has already triggered your hypothalamus to produce endorphins and adrenaline, and you are in this state of hyper survival. And counting and focusing on your counting is incredibly helpful for a lot of people. You can breathe while you count. So you can breathe and you're just counting, breathing in 1, 2, 3, 4. Other people enjoy counting objects in the room. You're not counting breath, you're counting objects. This one appeals to me as well. This is my second go-to grounding technique. No one knows I'm doing it, but I am looking around the room and I am counting objects. For me, I like to count similar objects. I like to find everything square. 1, 2, 3, window square, door frame square, book square, picture frame square, mirror square. And I find everything square in the room. And I'd 1, 2, 3. And I'll start again. I'll start with the same spot. I'll find things I didn't find before. I'll start again, same spot. then I'll start looking at other places. And for some reason, it calms me right down. Something about it allows my amygdala, look at all those things you're counting. Wow, we're really safe. You're just counting things? We're just counting things now? We're totally safe? Okay, and we're done. Go ahead and practice counting now. Was this the one for you? Did you feel it? Did you start to calm down? And your amygdala re-engages and you're able to be creative again. You're able to think on your feet again. You're able to come up with that problem, a solution to that problem that no one else could see. You're able to answer that question in that presentation that had flustered you. You're able to defend yourself in an argument with a spouse or a child or a coworker or a boss. And you're all of a sudden, you're at your best because your amygdala has allowed all the neural pathways in your brain to connect to your frontal cortex, which is where you hold your creativity. Your frontal cortex is where you hold your problem solving. Your frontal cortex is where you hold your ability to reason and apply logic to a situation. So these grounding techniques are, they're not magic. Okay, they're not magic. They take work and they take practice. And until you find your flavor of ice cream, they're gonna feel hokey, totally normal. The whole thing felt hokey to me. Miss Lady was presenting these things and I was like, who do you think you are talking to? I will not be tricked by some hokey, new age, voodoo, mysterioso, like super simple stuff. You're expecting this to work for me. So if you are feeling those same thoughts, just keep trying them and see what your flavor of ice cream is. I just dare you to give it a chance. And then once you find your flavor of ice cream, you will get it. You'll get it. It'll make total sense to you and you'll have that flavor of ice cream every time you start to get nervous and you start to feel your body starts, your heart rate starts to rise. You start to have trouble breathing a little bit and you're starting to have those amygdala triggered responses. And then also, while you're going through this journey, wouldn't it be fun to invite some of your children along with you? Whether that's the children you teach, whether that's the children in your home, and just see, hey, does this really calm you down? This seems like you look different. Something about your face just looks really calm and peaceful. You really liked feeling that sock in your shoe, didn't you? I could tell you really liked feeling that sock in your shoe. And then the next time they're having a meltdown at the store, or they're throwing chairs in your classroom, or whatever response it is, just be like, I remember you really liked it when you felt your sock in your shoe. Let's just feel the sock in your shoe. I'm gonna do it too. I'm gonna feel my sock in my shoe. It's so soft. It kind of scrunches a little bit when I flex my feet, when I flex my toes. Something about that. It's really fun to think about my sock and my shoe, and if I move my foot around, how it feels. It feels really soft in there. I know it's soft because I put it on this morning, and I felt how soft it was when I put it around my toes before it was even in my shoe. And so what happens is you become really aware of what helps other people. You become really aware of what to do in yourself. And then you're practicing these. So like it makes sense if your other child is different than this child, and this child you're dealing with could give two rats back ends about the sock in his shoe. He is going to be counting how many things in the room are red. And that is something that really helps him. And he finds this and you're like, ooh, I found something. Did you see the French fry box from McDonald's? I did too. That's red. Did you see the hand sanitizer? That's red. Oh, did you see that book? That's red too. And you're helping them engage their frontal cortex and calm down. And then all of a sudden you can talk to them about what it was that really upset them. I know you were really upset that I said no about ice cream. And all of a sudden they're like, yeah, I was really upset, but I know you said that I couldn't earlier. So maybe tomorrow. Yeah, maybe tomorrow you can have. And it might not work magically like that, but it also might work magically like that. Because when our brain is not allowing us to access our frontal cortex, how can we reason with children? Reason makes no sense. They are fight, flight, freeze, or submit. There is no room for reason. They can't do it no matter how much you wish they could. So once we do this, counting the red, feel your sock, then all of a sudden, when they've calmed down, then you are totally able to talk through why they can't have that ice cream, or why that 61 on a test is gonna be okay, even though 10 seconds ago they said my mom and dad are gonna kill me, which happened in my class. A child lost his mind over his first failing grade. And I wasn't sure how to help him. I didn't have these tools. But in the moment I was trying to reason with him, your parents love you. Have they ever killed you before? Like, no, you're going to be fine. Like, it's going to be harsh. Maybe they'll ground you. Maybe. He couldn't hear any of it. All he saw was that 61, I'm about to die. I'm going to die. I'm not safe. The amygdala was like, you are not safe. And just triggered a fight, flight, flee, submit. So he was fighting. He was fighting me. He was fighting the paper. He crumpled it up into a ball, into pieces. He was like ripping it up. He was throwing it. He was in a rampage. And then when he calmed down, after however long, which I wasn't given these tools to know what to do. It was just a matter of me just telling him that I love him and I'm on his team and I'm here to help you. And you just take some deep breaths. I'm gonna walk around the room. I'm gonna come back and just take some deep breaths the whole time I walk around the room, and I'm gonna come back to you and we're gonna talk about this. It's gonna be okay. I'm on your team. I love you. I'm gonna help you. And I would walk around the room, and by the time I got back, he was able to, whatever he had done, probably just breathe, just taking breaths, or scratching his pencil just focusing on scratching his pencil into the desk, which he would do all the time. And by the time I got back to him, we were able to talk it through. Sometimes I had to take 2 laps with this kid about different situations. Sometimes I'd have to take 3 laps around, but I'd constantly go back to him. I'm gonna take one more lap. You're not quite ready. I wanna talk to you, but I'm gonna take one more lap around the classroom. I'm on your team. I love you. I'm gonna do everything I can to keep you from getting in trouble. This is gonna be okay. And then I take another lap around. So we have all done, parts of this. We've done parts of this in our dealings with children in these responses that we might not have known were trauma responses. We might not have known they were anxiety responses. We might not have known what was going on in their brain, but we've all had pieces of this work. I'm hopeful that now that you've had the neuroscience, what's going on in the brain and the amygdala, you've had this kind of like, okay, what happens in the body when I am responding to trauma. Now you have some of these grounding techniques. What happens when I'm using grounding? How does it work? Why does it work? The proof that it does work. Counselors have known about this for half a century. This is not new information. It's just information that hasn't made its way to, widespread knowledge yet, which I'm hoping this will, every little bit changes that. And now you can apply it. So what I'd like you to do in your journal for the next few minutes is I would like you to think of a situation that happened in your life today, yesterday, where you responded and you knew you were responding, or a child had responded and you knew they were responding. And then I just want you to journal. I just want you to journal about how you would now apply what you've just done. Okay, and then next time my child throws themselves on the ground at Cracker Barrel, this is what I'm gonna do. This is what I'm gonna try. This is what I will do next time when I flip out about barbecue sauce spilling in my van at a stoplight. This is what I'm gonna do. I'm going to. And first I'm gonna pull up on my chair. Then I'm gonna count all the French fries on the floor of my van. And I'm just gonna count them until I have access to my frontal cortex again. Just kind of write it out, kind of journal through. A lot of you said that you do better by doing. So this is you doing it. You are doing it in an entry by writing it. Writing it and doing it are very similar things to your brain. They both help you remember the information. So go ahead and write down, pick a scenario that's happened in the past, or make one up and say, I'm going to do this now. Just kind of journal out what you're going to do. All right.
Hey everybody, today we're going to talk about grounding techniques and how to use them. Now, as always, let's start by defining grounding. I know I mention it all the time, but I don't actually know if I've ever taken the time to define it. So grounding is a technique that helps keep someone in the present instead of dissociating, spacing out, or shutting down. These techniques can help reorient a person to the here and now and in reality. Grounding skills can be helpful in managing overwhelming feelings or intense anxiety. And I created a video about grounding techniques with Alexa a while back, so I'll also link that in the description if you want to learn more. The most common grounding techniques I've talked about are snapping rubber bands on your arm, using fidget toys, and counting colors. But those don't work for everyone. And I know that many of you have said that you have a history of self-injury, and snapping rubber bands can lead to more urges to self-harm. Also, fidget toys don't work for everybody, and counting colors can help once, but then what do we do? And also, just because I think it's important to mention, we do need to be grounded and present whenever we're doing trauma work. Otherwise, it's like our brain is on a mini vacation and it isn't given the chance to reprocess anything. Leave your judgment at the door. There is no room for judgment about how well these work for you or how many you're able to complete. All you have to do is try. Okay, now let's get into them. Number 1, clapping our hands so that you can feel the sensation of that clap as it moves through your fingertips into your fingers, hands, arms, down your back, etc. Notice the tingling sensation this creates. And even pay attention to how long it lasts. Like, how long do you feel it as your eyes are closed and you're experiencing this sensation? And wait to open your eyes until it's all gone. So all those tingles that you maybe felt aren't there anymore. This can keep you in the here and now. And by initiating this intense sensation, right, clapping, we could clap pretty hard. Hopefully it can pull you back out of a potential flashback, dissociation, or urge to shut down. Number 2, stomping your feet and feeling that sensation again. Like in your hands, you're going through your tips of your toes, all the way through your toes into your feet, your legs, your back, however it moves through your body. I know certain areas in our body can be easier to focus on than others, so picking one that, isn't so emotionally charged or even attached to your self-injury if you struggle with that is best. And just like the clapping option, make sure you wait until the sensation is left to notice where that tingly feeling traveled in your body and then open your eyes. Number 3, rubbing your hands together. I know this sounds kind of weird, but you can feel the warmth that builds up between them as you rub them together. And feel the heat move from your hands, maybe it goes up your arms, maybe even, as your hands are all warmed up, you place them on your legs or your arms and you feel that heat sensation move through you. And again, just like the others, wait until it's completely gone to regain your focus by opening your eyes and looking back, at your therapist or whatever it is you were working on. Number 4, using a worry stone or silly putty to move around in your hand. Close your eyes and feel its temperature, texture, and its firmness. You may want to keep these things with you when you're going to therapy or going into some situation that may be stressful. You can play with it in your pocket and it can help keep you present and more calm while you go about your day. Remember though, you need to focus your energy onto that one object and try to take mental notes about how it feels, what you feel in your body when you touch it, and all stuff like that. That's what makes it a grounding technique. Number 5, we're going to use your sense of smell. Essential oils can help with this a lot. You can keep them in a rollerball applicator. You can buy these, I've seen them online on Amazon or any health food store. I've seen them even at Whole Foods. Or have an oil diffuser going in your home or when you're in therapy. Smells like citrus, lavender, jasmine, peppermint, and cinnamon, there's a lot of them, are all known to help us focus. So keeping these scents with you and closing your eyes while you smell it, maybe notice how it makes you feel. Is it a strong smell? Does it remind you of a calming place or perhaps a happy memory? Pay attention to that scent and notice how long you can smell it, even though you maybe have already put the oil away. Just like we'd wait to open our eyes until that tingly sensation from clapping or stomping goes away, do the same with the oil. Wait until that scent is completely gone before we open our eyes and re-engage. 6, we're going to utilize our sense of taste. Now I know this can be harder for those of us who struggle with eating disorders, but that's why it's important to find grounding techniques that help you most and work for you specifically. So for sense of taste, you can keep peppermints with you, ginger chews, or tea, or even gum. Notice the texture and the taste. Does it tingle on your tongue? Pay attention to how long you taste it. Is it spicy, salty, sweet? Does it bring up fond memories? Does it make you salivate? I know this can sound really weird, but we have to pay attention to all of these things, and hopefully by doing that, it'll bring us back to the present. And the 7th and final option I'm going to talk about goes back to our sense of touch. And this is creating a sensory bowl. You can place various items into it, think like sand or marbles, different shapes and sizes of beads, raw pasta shells, fidget toys, coins, you name it. Whatever has a different texture, temperature, etc. Because you know how metals can be a little colder than things that aren't metal? Just throwing that out there. You can add it in there and use it to keep you grounded. I've had clients who keep theirs in Tupperware containers, so they put the lid on it and they bring it with them to therapy or on vacation or wherever they need it. So make sure that yours can travel with you, or have a travel one and then one that stays at home or at your therapist's office. Those can be really, really helpful to have different textures and things you can just feel around in when you're really struggling to stay present. And again, just remember that staying grounded and present is vital to our recovery from trauma and can even help us better manage our anxiety or any overwhelming feeling.
Okay, I want to thank you guys so much for participating, and I know that there's so much more to learn. You can go research. This is going to be a never-ending, for some of you, endeavor to learn all these things. So thank you guys. So you can go ahead and pause now if you're done and you have things to do, but if not, stay with me because I've included a bonus video that is about what happens when you become creative and you do repetitive, easy things that are creating something like knitting or painting or working with Legos. It's just too good not to share. So I wanted to share it with you because it might give a lot of us insights into our own mind and the minds of the children around us. So this is like a little bonus extra off-topic video. Enjoy.
So we can change our neurochemistry by taking a pill that will alter our neurochemistry, or maybe we can change our neurochemistry strategically by engaging in smart behaviors that will change it in more healthy ways. Well, I was reading that about 100 years ago, doctors used to prescribe knitting to women in those days who they described as overwrought with anxiety. They didn't know why, but they saw that it calmed their nerves, kind of like Darwin. Knowing now what we know about neuroscience, this makes perfect sense. Serotonin is increased when we are engaged in repetitive behavior. And the knitting and making the stitches is an example of repetitive behavior. As the knitter is thinking about that beautiful scarf or hat that she or he is making, that increases dopamine. It's known as the pleasure neurochemical of the brain, but it's mostly involved with anticipation, looking forward to something. And as you think about the stitches instead of the worries of the day, that probably calms and reduces stress hormones. And if there was one neurochemical that probably is a culprit, a suspect in a lot of the mysteries related to mental health, it's these stress hormones. Cortisol, for example. About 50% of everyone diagnosed with depression has high cortisol levels. So anything we can do to depress that or decrease the stress hormones is an important endeavor. And if we're knitting in the company of friends, then that may increase oxytocin. And oxytocin is known as the cuddle chemical, but it's important in fostering positive relationships, and also probably reduces stress. So here you go, a behaviorceutical with one activity of knitting. It may be cooking or woodworking or gardening, but something that's reminding you that your physical effort is the result of that is some reward. So I'm a neuroscientist, so we want to go back to the brain. I remember the drawing board here. And I was fascinated to see that the area of the brain that is involved in reward, that is impacted in depression, lack of feeling that reward, is the nucleus accumbens, kind of lower in the brain. And it has rich connections to that area of the brain involved in movement called the striatum. And those areas have indirect and direct connections to the frontal cortex that's involved in our decision making and planning. And the more that we engage in behaviors where we can see the result of our effort, those circuits are consolidating so that as we go forward for the next challenge in our life, we have a little of experiential capital to bring with us, to remind us that what we do can make a difference. We did produce that scarf. We made that cake. We walked around the thinking path. I work with rats for a living. These are my colleagues, and they outsmart me all the time. As a scientist, we need evidence. So all of that theorizing about our ancient humans and ideas about depression, it started to make sense, but I wanted to take this to the lab. A lot of friends and people who find out what I do, they ask, but what can you learn about our brains, our fancy-schmancy brains, by looking at this very simplistic brain? Well, it is true that it's small. It's 2 grams compared to our about 1,400 gram brain, but it has all the same parts, all the same neurochemicals. And if I showed you a neuron, that individual cell in a human brain versus a rat brain, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. So it's a wonderful model to start with. I realize that a rat is not a little human, and we're not a big rat, but it's a good model. Well, some of us may be. So when I was thinking I wanted to put these rats to work, I'm thinking about this idea about work and producing products that we're proud of. I needed something that the rats would work for, and our rats love Fruit Loops. So we had to get them addicted to Fruit Loops, and then I needed a task. And I thought back to my grandmother's garden, and I wanted them to harvest something. So we came up with a task where they would harvest Fruit Loops, not fruit or vegetables, but they would dig up Fruit Loops. So they have this arena, and we'd move around these mounds of bedding, and they were trained, so when you see a mound, you go and you just gently dig, and voila, there's a Fruit Loop. And they had an opportunity to get 4 of those every day. So it's not intensive training, it's about 5 or 10 minutes a day for about 6 weeks, but they're building those connections between the reward areas of the brain and the motor movement areas of the brain to produce effort-based rewards. Well, for proper science, you need a control group to compare to this experimental group. So our control group was a group that we put in the same arena, and we gave them their Fruit Loops regardless of what they did. So my students like to call the experimental group, where their effort was contingent upon their behavior, or their rewards were contingent upon their behavior, the worker rats. And the rats that got the reward no matter what, there wasn't a contingency there, the trust fund rats. So we have the worker rats and the trust fund rats. And so next we wanted to, so we've done several studies. So I see you can relate to that a little bit. Done several studies where we wanted to put our worker rats to the test to see if this effort-based reward training generalized to other things. So we like to expose them to new challenges, like swimming. They've been in the lab, they've never been in water. Well, the effort-based reward worker rats, they're more likely to dive down like little rat scuba divers to explore the environment. And they showed more evidence of effective coping. And when we look at their brains, I think brains are gorgeous here, they show more evidence of neuroplasticity, that fertilizer, brain-derived neurotrophic factor, more complex connections with the neurons. So we see this neuroplasticity. And for the interventions and therapeutic approaches that we have currently for depression, most of those directly or indirectly increase neuroplasticity. But here we're doing it naturally. But that was with training. We wanted another way to stimulate effort-based rewards that was more spontaneous. So we've known for a while that if you put a rat in an exciting, engaging world, something we call an enriched environment, kind of a Disneyland of sorts, they're busier and they have more neuroplasticity, and it seems to be great for their brains. So we did this, and we also have, we look at artificial, kind of manufactured stimuli and more natural stimuli. So we have our country rats and our city rats. And they seem to be equally smart, but our country rats seem to have an edge on emotional resilience. So they're more like those effort-based reward rats that'll go out, the bold ones. And also with our effort-based reward rats, we see lower stress hormones and higher hormones of resilience. And remember, we said that was important for mental health. So interestingly also, we found that when we have a group of rats in the enriched environment and a group of rats in just a standard environment, they do things more together, not only in engaging with their environment, but through cooperation. And so we've actually shown that their oxytocin that we talked about increases when they're engaged in these natural and enriched environments doing things together. And that's important for our behavior-ceutical cocktail. This doesn't surprise me because recently in Denmark they showed that humans, they followed about 1 million, who grew up with, and their childhood household had more green around it, shrubs, trees. They were up to 55% less likely to experience depression in their life. If we could bottle that, whoa, that would be amazing. So, where does that leave us? We're not going to go back to the cave. We're not going to go back to being hunters and gatherers. We're here in this advanced, technologically rich world, and we benefit in many ways from that. But looking back at what we know about our ancestors and the brain and my wise rats, I think it reminds us that we need to remember our evolutionary roots as we go forward in this world of technology and have a little bit of those effort-based rewards, especially if it's related to nature in some way, to help us in our mental health. Well, and I had an experience where I got to put this to the test to see if an engaged, enriched environment would allow the rats to show healthier brains. And I had a colleague who asked me, Kelly, can you teach a rat to drive a car? And I thought, well, why would I want to do that? That's not natural, and it goes against everything I thought, but we drive cars. And before I knew it, we were talking about how you would get a rat to drive a car and how you would shape it to go in. We decided it would grab the little copper bars, and of course it would be driving to a Fruit Loop tree. That's their drive-in. And if you've ever wondered if you could teach a rat to drive a car, yes, you can. Not only can they drive, but they can steer. They're auto-correcting, right? And this blew my mind, but more relevant for this story is when we looked at rats that were in the enriched environment versus the standard environment. The rats in the enriched environment, when we took them through the ropes of driving to see how long it would take them to learn to drive, the criterion for robust driving, they learned in 22 trials. The standard rats, it took, well, we don't know how long it would take. They never really learned to drive. This blew our minds that the enriched environment made our rats better learners of technology. So we think that our enriched rats would get their driver's license, but not so much for the rodents. They would be denied. So, as we think about our brains and what they evolved to do, the idea of taking a single pill and being able to replicate what goes on in our brains naturally seems as just about as unreasonable as thinking that we could take a pill to be a better parent. You just can't do that. You have to go through the ropes. You have to have those experiences to go forward. You have to have the behavior that leads to behavior-ceuticals to change the neurochemistry in healthy ways. So I started with a mystery. What's going on with our brains? Why are these rates increasing? And looking back and thinking about how our behavior can change not only our neurochemistry, but our neuroanatomy. I think that the solution and clues may have been in our hands all along. Thank you.